Call the Honourable Darren Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on the first reading of this bill. As my colleagues have said, Labor approaches this legislation disappointed that an opportunity that appears to be a once-in-a-generation opportunity to make some changes has not been taken up to the full extent it could have been. But we will vote for the first reading of this bill because there are aspects of the legislation which we are in support of, and there are other elements that we would like to use the Select Committee process to be able to assert our view or advance our view with regard to different aspects of the legislation. I think just at the outset, sir, before I touch on the one particular topic I'd like to raise in the House this afternoon, I'd like to say that I do agree with some of the earlier speakers who have spoken, particularly Heather Roy, who made the point that legislation alone wouldn't make the changes that we need. I totally agree with that. I think that attitude change in our society is equally as important as the law changes that Parliament can pass here. If we believe that we can just pass law and that people will pore over our Hansard details and read the statute books and make their decisions based on that basis alone, I think we would be deluding ourselves. So we do need a two-pronged approach of attitude change and leadership in the community, but also I think that just simply relying on that won't do it. We do need to be able to make sure our laws are robust. And in that respect, I think that the Law Commission report set up by the last Labor government, reported under this government, and Simon Power has taken that forward, or taken that work through to this legislation that we're debating today, did provide not only that once-in-a-generation opportunity I spoke of, but also provided a lot of political cover for the government of the day. I don't pretend that these are easy issues for a government to grapple with. People don't line up along philosophical lines necessarily on these kind of topics. And so there was an opportunity for the government to make the best use of the political will that exists in the Parliament to make some of those changes. And I think it's worth making that point. So this reform bill contains 10 different parts that amends many different laws. And the aspect I wanted to speak about today was something that's not in the bill, that could have been in the bill, and that and I believe is a huge and damning oversight on the part of the government for not taking up the recommendation that was in the Law Commission report and also not being able to take the political will that was there. And I believe, sir, that in the first reading of this reform bill should have been provisions that lowered the blood alcohol concentration level for adults from 0.08 to 0.05. Sir, I believe if that provision had been included in this reform bill, which touches on many pieces of legislation, then I believe that the government would have found on a conscience vote the overwhelming majority of the House would support doing that. The Law Commission report, of which this legislation is based, has made that clear, and indeed the Minister of Transport himself, when this issue was being debated as part of Safer Journeys, the road safety document, said that he thought the current limits were ridiculous, only to not follow through when the decision had to be made to either include it in this legislation or an alternative piece of legislation currently before the Transport Select Committee. And sir, it's an idea whose time has come. There have been over 300 studies which show the effect of alcohol on drivers, and it is a terrible, terrible effect indeed. In our country, roughly a third of our annual road toll is made up of people whose deaths are caused by alcohol, and there are many, many thousands of injuries over the course of a decade where drivers are injured as a result of alcohol. I also note in passing that drug driving is a factor in a number of these accidents as well. New Zealand stands now as one of the countries in the world, in the Western world, with the highest tolerance of alcohol allowed in the blood, while still giving drivers the ability to be on our roads. And I think that, sir, is an absolutely terrible thing indeed, when we know from those studies that by reducing that road toll, that drink drive limit, we could make a real impact on our roads straight away. There's no doubt that the public support is there for that, sir. Two-thirds of people in a One News poll responded that they believe the alcohol limit should be lowered down to 0.05. 76% of people in the Herald on Sunday campaign nominated a drink drive limit of effectively 0.05. And so even in the Minister of Transport's own road Safer Journeys document, the Minister of Transport suggested that 85% of people would be prepared or had a genuine desire to see that would come down. We're left with arguments against it, sir, which I don't find compelling at all. The first argument that I hear from the government for not including that measure in this legislation is Labor never did it. So that cannot be the basis of public policy in New Zealand, what a previous government did or didn't do. There are many reasons why governments don't do things. Sometimes it's simply the passage of time. Sometimes there are ideas that simply come of time, and I believe this is one. It's the decision that our party's taken to support a lowering is based on two key things. One, the Labor government's road safety vision was written in the year 2000 for 10 years. It ran out this year, and this government has picked it up with Safer Journeys for the next 10 years to be able to put out what its vision is. And in 2000, this wasn't the big issue in road safety. In 2002, you'll recall, that was often speed was the thing that governments were looking at. I believe now, 10 years on, there is a desire in the community to see that blood alcohol concentration lowered. I also think, sir, the other point that's worth noting is that the Law Commission was tasked with going away and looking at everything. I agree with what other speakers have said. Too often in this debate we've chosen one topic and said if everyone votes a certain way on one topic, every disaster and every mischief in the world will go away. And sure enough, everyone feels good at the time. There's lots of backpacking that goes on, and then we are still in the same situation. The Law Commission, that once-in-a-generation opportunity through Sir Geoffrey Palmer's work, did give us the chance to look at things afresh, and that was one of the recommendations that came back to the government, to the minister, but which has not found its way for us to progress any further. So it cannot be an argument alone that the Labor government did not do this, because we could stand here then and say, oh well, the national government that had 9 years before us didn't do it, and the National Party could shoot back and say, oh well, the 6 years of the government in the 80s didn't do it. This is just not a way to conduct a proper and sensible debate. We need to be talking about tomorrow, not yesterday, and we have offered our political support to the government to be able to lower this measure. The second argument the government puts up for not lowering down to 0.05 is not enough data exists. This is just not a strong argument at all. The government's own papers, the discussion document that was signed off, that was launched here in the Parliament with great fanfare, makes the point that there are 300 studies over 50 years. You can cut and slice the data any way you like. It is clear our roads are safer for our families and our children and all the people in our community when the blood alcohol concentration is lower than 0.08. The third argument that comes up, and to be fair, not one used by the government, but used by other people, is, look, the problem is not drivers between 05 and 08, the problem is drivers who are well and truly over the limit. And on the face of it, sir, that is an argument that is worthy of investigation. In Canberra, there was a study in Australia where they were able to show that by lowering from 08 to 05, as every state and territory in Australia has done, the overall consumption of alcohol amongst drivers fell. And in fact, in those very extreme drink driving cases where people were 0.15 and 0.2, which is phenomenal levels of alcohol in their system, there was a rapid decrease of over a third in the first instance and nearly 60% in the second when those limits fell. So not only do you get drivers who are drinking at a much lower level under the 0.05 limit, but those who keep on drinking and get to 0.08 and can't make the decision to stop drinking don't get to those much higher limits, which often cause devastation on the road. And I'm sure the Minister of Transport would be aware of those studies, those 300 studies that exist. So those are the three arguments often put up by the government that have led them to take this decision not to include the lowering of the blood alcohol concentration limit in this alcohol reform bill, which amends many pieces of legislation. The freedom argument was raised by the ACT Party, and they talked of the freedom of people to be able to choose to drink and then drive, and freedom is a very important principle in a democracy, and I believe people should be free to be able to use our roads safely, knowing the decisions and actions of others won't be able to wipe them out or cause devastation. I also think, so I think it is a serious argument that the ACT members were putting up, that freedom does involve good decision making, it involves good judgments, and I just believe that at 0.08, where people are legally intoxicated, they can't be expected to be in a position of exercising the good judgment that freedom does require for them. So I hope they will consider that argument. So the political will is there for this to happen, the public support is there, all the research is available, and it is a real shame that the government has wimped out on this particular issue, because they have decided on the political judgment of the Minister of Transport not to do it. I couldn't describe it any better than Tom Scott in this morning's this morning's Dominion, where he has Stephen Joyce there saying, if there is any link proving that alcohol intake to the road toll exists, rest easy New Zealand, I will find it. I hope I get to buy the original.